All right. This is Buddy. I am talking with my good friend and my insurance person that I trust with all of my business, whether it's personal, commercial, business, anything. Chad Huneycutt, who owns the Huneycutt Group, which is one of the largest independent firms that hasn't sold out like most of them have in the area. Am I right?
Yeah, I believe that would be correct. Yes. Still
Well,
privately owned.
well, good. And Chad, what areas do you service? I mean, what parts of the country or state or whatever?
We primarily focus on, any state or county that borders the Atlantic Ocean, but primarily where the bulk of our business is right here in the Tri-County area, surrounding the Wilmington area. We do venture down into the South Carolina markets, as needed based on our customers' needs and the exposures down there. But I'd say the overwhelming percentage of our business is right here in the Wilmington area.
Okay. And you do everything. I mean, you do personal, commercial, houses. I mean, you do builders, you do HOA, you do everything, don't you?
We do. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me tell you a story. And the reason I brought you on is because it just hit me hard. A client of mine, her sister, they're in their 70s, right here in Wilmington. I'm not going to name names or name the location, but their house burnt down 2 weeks ago
Mm.
and been in it forever, paid it off just like you're supposed to a long time ago. And, they're well into the retired age and they didn't own a mortgage. Mortgage companies keep the replacement values, keep them honest because their money's involved. And they're not going to get enough money to
Right.
nowhere near rebuild a house, buy a new one, or even carry them very long, in a rental or to assisted living. So because it was never up to replacement value. Talk to me
Right.
about replacement values in the last 3 or 4 years because the costs have just gone up.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a major point of conversation with a lot of our insureds because it's such um, and to your point, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a major increase in the cost of construction, whether that's building codes have changed, making sure a home is properly protected from wind and hurricanes in our area. Just the overall cost of the construction is very important. And over the last several years that we've been doing this, most of our insurance carriers, they do have a small inflation guard built into the policy, but it's not more than, 2 or 3% on an annual basis. And we've seen the cost of construction go up anywhere from, 25 to 40% in our area just based on the demand for the real estate, not to mention just the increasing cost of lumber and concrete and plumbing. So, it's something that we take a look at every time our customers are coming up for renewal, is just to make sure that that home is properly insured. Because in the event of a total loss, God forbid, like your situation, which was a fire, we're looking at cleaning that lot and starting from scratch. So there's a lot of costs that go into that may or may not be accounted for. I'd say that in, our area, if you're on the beach and your home is up on pilings, the starting price for that is at least $200 a foot. If you're inland and you're looking at a crawl space or something like that, maybe it's 150 to 175 a foot, just depending on the quality of the home. But that's just a starting point. Those are kind of rule of thumb that kind of gets us going and having that conversation. But we need to look at each home individually to make sure that we have a good understanding of the quality of the home, the size of the home, and what that replacement cost would be, so that if they did, have a situation like that, we can come in, provide them with the funds necessary to either put that house back together or build it from scratch.
Yeah, and I feel like because I never had a call like this, to be honest with you. And I was in 26 years, and I was thinking, I'll bet there's a lot of folks that's been with XYZ, insurance company forever,
Sure.
and their replacement cost is based on, is so out of whack because
Yeah.
2% a year inflation card doesn't do anything for the last 4 years.
No, it's not going to get you anywhere near where you need to be. So if you've had a homeowner's policy, on the books, for 4 or 5 years, it definitely needs to be looked at and reassessed to make sure you have the proper coverage.
Well, I know I'm probably one of your biggest aggravating customers because every time I get an invoice, I'm like, can you please reshop this?
Sure.
Which is what I like about uh, an independent company, because you are able to shop numerous carriers.
Yeah, that's right.
And we all used to use Lighthouse. They've gone away now, but there'll be new ones that want the business badly. But I'm just, you know, how often do you think people should shop their insurance or take a look at it? I mean, if you were not in the insurance business, I know you never want them to shop. You just want them to renew. But what would you recommend?
Well, right now, I think everyone should be having this conversation with their agent. The last couple of years, we've had a lot of turmoil and turnover in the marketplace. And you mentioned a carrier, that's no longer with us. There's quite a few others that are no longer in the market. Either they've gone out of business or they've non-renewed, their North Carolina exposure. And so we've had to replace and remarket a large percentage of our book of business in the last 24 months to make sure that we have our clients right where they need to be. So if you haven't already had that conversation in the last 12 to 24 months with your agent, you definitely should be having it. But going forward, assuming that this market kind of stabilizes and we can get back to a more just kind of equal playing field where things aren't changing as much, I still think that it's a good conversation to have on an annual basis. And the best time to do that is around the renewal of your policy.
All right, I want to switch gears. In this market, we have been able to we go out, I list a house, and we're able to tell the seller, the good news is now it's changing, it's shifting. I mean, we're not able to get everything you want as a seller anymore.
Sure.
We're having to do price reductions. We're not seeing that, it's a different world. We're actually having to fix stuff on houses again. But one thing we've been able to do, because it does take a lot of stress off, especially for folks that are moving and just can't handle stress well, to do we call it a seller possession after closing, which is really basically a free rent back after it closes.
Right.
But if you're the buyer, you need, I was having this conversation with you offline, you need to have some conversations with your insurance agent, because you may not have coverage if you're just buying it as your primary residence, even though you're not occupying it. So talk to me about what you should do with that for the buyer, and then what the seller needs to do converting it to contents.
Sure. Yeah, it's very important that strategy is set up correctly at the beginning from an insurance standpoint, because if we are providing a homeowner's insurance policy for someone under the assumption that it's going to be your primary home, then that policy will not allow for tenant occupancy. So even if it's 2 weeks or 2 months, that policy doesn't provide coverage if something were to happen, whether that's property damage or liability situation that the tenant was found negligent on. So the homeowner could find themselves in a real pickle with not potentially having the right insurance. And then the seller who's going to remain in the home for the 2 weeks, a month, what have you, they also need to make sure they have proper insurance, because when they sold that home, that insurance, they no longer had an insurability, and therefore none of their personal property or their personal liability stayed in place either. So, the seller and the buyer need to have a conversation with their agent to make sure that the insurance, the strategy meets the insurance policies that are put in place.
Okay. Yeah, because we see that, and nobody wants to deal with it. And a lot of times the mortgage company will call whoever their favorite insurance company is. They say, just put coverage on it. Well,
Sure.
the mortgage company may not know the details.
That's correct.
Actually, a lot of times they don't know the details of what's going on. So I think having a relationship and talking to a few different insurance agents, I think makes a lot of sense. Just like with realtors, if you're thinking about buying or selling, I think you should have some conversations with multiples.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to be one of those, obviously, but you should have conversations to find out who you mesh with and to find out where different people come from. All right. I'm going to flip over to flood insurance.
Okay.
It's almost August 1st. We're in the heat of hurricane season. And Florence taught us, as others, Hurricane Florence, that there's a lot of areas that the mortgage company may not require you to carry flood insurance, but you still should. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who should carry flood insurance?
anyone who experiences rain in their backyard should consider flood insurance.
Because it's really inexpensive if you're not in if you're not in a bad flood zone, isn't it?
That's correct. If you're in what we would refer to as an X flood zone, which is typically a flood zone that a mortgage company would not require you to carry flood insurance, it's easy to overlook and just assume you don't need it. However, and back to your example of Hurricane Florence, we had, just our little agent, we probably had 150 claims, flood claims, from folks that did not have flood insurance because they were in an X flood zone, or they called us to file a flood claim, and realized, wait a minute, you mean I never bought flood insurance? It wasn't mandatory. I thought my mortgage company had it. So it's a conversation that we should be having. Obviously, we're close to the coast. We experience the hurricanes, but we could also experience several days of heavy rain in our rivers and the marsh areas and
And
everything
it, and
overflow.
it's not just the ocean. It could be your cul-de-sac filling up, the stormwater filling up, the
That's
drainage
correct.
ditches filling up. I mean, it's any kind of rising water, correct?
That's key, and that's right. That's the key words. It's rising water. So anytime your home experiences damage from rising water, it would be considered flood damage.
Okay. Now let's talk about private flood versus non-private flood, because you know I had a conversation with you. We just bought a piece of property. Unfortunately, that one doesn't qualify for private. But tell them why you should look at the difference of private and non-private, because it makes a huge difference. Here it is, almost August 1st.
Correct. Yeah, one of the benefits of going in the private flood market is there is no waiting period before the coverage kicks in.
Right.
Unlike going through the federal flood program, the NFIP, if you don't have a mortgage, if you're buying something outright and you're paying cash, or you're deciding, oh wait a minute, we're close to hurricane season, let me go buy flood insurance. Well, there's a mandatory 30-day wait that you have to wait on. So if you bought flood insurance tomorrow, August 1st, it's not going to kick in until the 30th of the month. And who knows, what kind of storm could head our way in the next 30 days.
But whereas private, it
It
kicks
would
in
go
right
in
away.
That's correct. The private flood market, that policy we can make effective the same day you purchase the policy.
And if I remember right, because I've got private on mine,
Correct.
and I think that it has a lot more benefits with private, with your personal property coverage and things like that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There's a lot of differences between the private flood market and the federal flood market. And anyone listening that's interested should definitely talk to their insurance agent about it. But just a couple key points with the federal flood policy, it only goes up to a max of $250,000 for your home. In the private flood market world, you can purchase coverage up to the replacement costs of your home. So if that's $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, you could actually purchase flood insurance up to those limits. The other benefit is you can get replacement costs on your contents in the private flood market, whereas on the federal flood program, it's only actual cash value for your personal belongings, which just means it'll be heavily depreciated come claim time. And
Okay.
then also for second homes, in the private flood market, you can actually get loss of rents coverage. So if you've got a secondary home at the beach and you rely on rental income to help carry the cost of that, if you have a federal flood policy, they do not extend coverage for any of your loss of rents if it's due to
Wow.
flood damage. In the private world, you can get that coverage.
Okay. Chad, thank you. If somebody wanted to have somebody, I mean, do you guys do like free reviews of insurance just to see, what you got, and then, hey, we'll take a look at it, and just, I've always known you to take, I mean, you've told me before, stay where you're at. Don't mess with it. Just leave it be. You got a great
Absolutely.
package.
Yeah, we
And
we do that all day, every day. We meet with folks that are our current customers that just want to review it, or someone that's not our client and they just want us to take a look at what they got and they're interested in a second opinion. We do that all the time, and we're happy to do that.
and the one thing they should be looking for right now is your replacement costs. They need to really have an idea of that.
Absolutely. They need to make sure that the coverage amount matches what they would have to rebuild their home for today. The cost would be.
Chad, thank you very much. If somebody wanted to reach you, what's the best way?
Our local phone number is 910-338-1773, or our website, which is honeycuttgroup.com.
All right. And I'll put those notes down below the video. Thank you so much, Chad. I look
You
forward
got it.
to I look forward to speaking with you and arguing with you on policies again.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.